Oh,
Um, so a lot of that looks like rest. So that's why I was drawn to your podcast, because we're doing too many things, most of us, and not resting and filling our cup up enough. So inspiring women to rest and to fill their cup is a passion of mine. Because that box that I was put in, I liked it
yeah.
to an extent. It was so comfortable to
Yeah.
just follow the rules, and I was so proud of it. So I didn't want to get out of that box. I thought I had done really good job of checking all the boxes. So even though I rode really high highs of like, I got this, and then lows of, oh no, I didn't check all my boxes, I am so awful. Even riding those highs and lows was predictable, and it was like what I chose to do. So in that box, I think it was really easy to just stay there, because
Yeah.
we have a natural propensity towards the law and we need the
Yeah.
gospel preached to us over and over and over.
Right.
Like, hey, you're worthy not because anything you do, you've just been made that way.
Right.
I'm not sure if I have ever labeled it burnout, but when I was following all the rules and doing what I was quote unquote supposed to
Yeah.
be doing as a good Christian wife, or a good Christian, or a good Christian mom, or good Christian in ministry, whatever label we have for what we're trying to measure up for. When I was doing all the things, I was exhausted,
Yeah.
but I didn't even give myself permission to admit that I was exhausted. I just
Right.
kept going because this is what I
Mhm.
was supposed to be doing. So I can't even, like, I didn't even feel liberty to admit that I
Yeah.
was weak or that I was not doing
It
okay. It
Yeah.
says, if we don't think we have time for Sabbath, that we think too much of ourselves.
Yes.
And that stings, but we often feel like we're the ones that have to keep all of the plates spinning when
Yeah.
actually it's God.
Right. Right. Welcome to the Burned Out Preacher podcast, where we have frank discussions weekly on ministry struggles and how many of us in the ministry have gone from overwhelmed and exhausted to calm and equipped leaders who love being in ministry. I am your host, Monique Addison-Stinson, burnout prevention coach for ministry leaders. Are you ready to overcome burnout? If your answer is yes, then keep listening. Right. Hello and welcome back to the Burned Out Preacher podcast. I am your host, Monique Addison-Stinson, burnout prevention coach for ministry leaders, and I will soon be expanding my services to help corporate women because I've had quite a few reach out to me, and I thought I kept turning them away and saying, I only help ministry leaders, but I thought, why am I turning them away if they need help? So I will be expanding my services, but today we are continuing our series on ministry burnout, but we are going to dive a little deeper into just what burnout looks like for us lay people. And I have an amazing, amazing guest. I was so happy. I think she and I met in a Facebook group, I think. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, Monique. I'm so glad to be here. My name is Emily Lewis, and I am a faith coach and a spiritual mentor for Christians who have been taught that their spirituality or their relationship with God needs to fit into tidy little check boxes. And then they lose who they are. That was my story. I was just following all the rules, and I didn't really have a personal relationship with God. But He broke through with His unconditional love and spoke worthiness over me, and it changed my life. So now I get to coach and help others break free from those molds that we're tried to be like we try to shove ourselves into, so that we can experience the abundance that Christ actually came to give us.
Oh,
Um, so a lot of that looks like rest. So that's why I was drawn to your podcast, because we're doing too many things, most of us, and not resting and filling our cup up enough. So inspiring women to rest and to fill their cup is a passion of mine. I also have the privilege of working with my local church. That's been a journey. And I'm so thankful to be a part of a healthy local church now. And I have four little girls. My oldest is 6. I have twins that are 4, and my littlest is almost 3.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, and my husband and I live in the town that I was born in southwestern Montana.
That is so much there that I would like to unpack. First of all, God bless you for your ministry and business. I absolutely love that, and you're so right. We do have a really bad habit of putting people in boxes in the church, don't we?
Mhm. Yeah, we do.
It's almost like stifling God's gifts because we have these boxes we just want to place everyone in, and that could eventually turn into burnout. So you're right. Rest is very important. Talk about more about your story. You said that you felt like you were in a box and you found your way out. I really want to. I know we were going to talk about burnout, but I really want to dive into your story a bit because I'm really interested.
Sure. Yeah. It's such a God story. The transformation that he's done in my life is, I just am so blown away and thankful because that box that I was put in, I liked it
Yeah.
to an extent. It was so comfortable to
Yeah.
just follow the rules. And I was so proud of it. So I didn't want to get out of that box. I thought I had done really good job of checking all the boxes. So even though I rode really high highs of like, I got this, and then lows of, oh no, I didn't check all my boxes, I am so awful. Even riding those highs and lows was predictable. And it was like what I chose to do. So in that box, I think it was really easy to just stay there because
Yeah. Yeah.
we have a natural propensity towards the law, and we need the gospel preached to us over and over and over.
Right.
Like, hey, you're worthy not because anything you do, you've just been made that way.
Right.
And so you don't have anything to prove. But um, there was an event that happened that pretty much took the foundation of what I believed out from under me overnight.
Wow.
And I was gifted a faith crisis because it was like, if that isn't true, and that person was not teaching what or walking what they taught, I was able to ask those questions. And it was the first time I kind of poked my head out of the box a little bit. And I was willing to actually hear God say that he loved me unconditionally. A- And he continued to speak that over me. And it was like such a breakthrough just knowing that.
Yeah.
Then my motivation could shift. I wasn't doing all these things to try to prove that I was good enough. I wasn't doing all these things to avoid a fearful, angry God. I wasn't doing them because I felt guilty that I wasn't taking, doing my part. I was then doing things because God loved me and his love is
Wow.
pouring into me and pouring out of me. And the second thing that shifted after that was I learned how to rest. Oh,
Uh,
wait, maybe I don't have to do all of these things then if
right.
my motivation is right. Maybe I
Right.
can let go of these things because
Absolutely.
I'm already, and I don't have to prove I am. And as I was thinking about this episode, I think there's a lot of people in ministry who we feel like our ministry becomes our identity, and like we're trying to prove something that through a role that we're filling
Yep.
when we already are a daughter of God, a son of God, and
Exactly.
we don't have to prove any of that through a specific role that we're filling for a time.
Yes. Oh, you just preached, Emily. I feel like I need to send you an offering. That was so good. That was so good. And you're right. Um, a lot of a lot of ministry leaders are that title, right? They're the pastor, they're the apostle, the preacher, the doctor, so and so, and evangelist, so and so. And that's awesome. But that doesn't define who you are.
Right.
Right. That doesn't define who you are. And there's so much more that God wants to do through you. And that title, as you mentioned, just really puts you in a box. And you're right. We like to stay in that box, don't we? It's so nice
Mhm.
and cozy.
Mhm.
We
Right.
don't want to
Even
change.
right. Even when it's constricting and it doesn't allow us to be the full version of ourselves that God wants us to be,
Right.
man, I find myself crawling back to that box sometimes going, man, this would be a lot more comfortable than this boldness that God is asking me to have
Right.
instead.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. He does call us to be bold. I have a bad habit of and those who may be listening to this may say, no, you don't. But I do. I have this really bad habit of I'm doing it now. Watching and watching what I say, not wanting to draw attention, not wanting to be polarizing, because I
Mm,
don't, and so I try to I keep myself in this little box, if you will, because I don't want to ruffle any feathers any more that I have already. And God wants me to do more. And I feel like you just given me free will
I love it. Go do it. I can't wait.
to just kind of peek outside the box a little bit.
Yes.
I love that so much. Thank you so much for sharing your story. That is amazing. I feel like that story is a testimony, and I feel like your testimony will set some people free. So thank you so much
Mhm.
for
Yeah,
sharing that. So
absolutely.
tell me about burnout. Have you experienced it? What did it feel like? All that stuff, so that we can let people know. As I mentioned, I am trying to help my listeners understand what burnout can look like.
Hmm. I'm not sure if I have ever labeled it burnout, but when I was following all the rules and doing what I was quote unquote supposed to
Yeah,
be doing as a
yeah,
good Christian wife or a good Christian or a good Christian mom or good Christian in ministry, whatever label we have for what we're trying to measure up for. When I was doing all the things, I was exhausted,
yeah.
but the I didn't even give myself permission to admit that I was exhausted. I just
Right.
kept going because this is what I
Mhm.
was supposed to be doing. So I can't even, like, I didn't even feel liberty to admit that I
Yeah,
was weak or that I was not doing okay.
yeah. Because we think we're doing it
Yeah,
for God.
right,
And so how dare we be tired?
right.
Yeah.
How dare we have physical limitations
Right.
or something?
That is so true. And I feel like a lot of ministry leaders are doing that as well. They're just going, going, going. And we forget we're not God.
Exactly. Exactly.
We're not
Like,
God.
oh man, that reminds me of a quote. Uh, oh man, I always forget who said this, but it's a quote that says, if we don't think we have time for Sabbath, that we think too much of ourselves.
Yes.
And that stings, but we often feel like we're the ones that have to keep all of the plates spinning when
Yeah.
actually it's God.
Right. Right. And he doesn't need our help.
Mm.
He does use us, right?
Mhm.
He uses willing bodies to, tread upon the earth and to get things done, but he doesn't need us, you know,
Mhm.
and he doesn't need us to be awake all times of the night.
Mhm.
Uh,
And he needs us more as
as
ourselves,
exactly.
not what we're doing. Like,
Right, exactly. Exactly. He needs you to be what he created you to be.
mhm,
Your
mhm,
authentic self. That is so true. I also noticed that a lot of ministry leaders, and I did this too. You're talking about you were just doing all the things. I was doing all the things as well. And I share this for my podcast where I literally, this is in my 20s, I literally was at church, I want to say 6 days a week,
mm,
sometimes seven. And I was over the music ministry. I was a steward, which is kind of high ranking in the AME church, African Methodist Episcopal Church. And then I was in the ministry. as well. So I had several ministry hats and I was doing all the things. I literally would work 8 hours a day,
Mm.
leave work. At the time, my mom and I only had one car. So I would get off work. I would go to my mom's job, wait for her to get off work, and then we go to church for some kind of meeting or rehearsals or something. Like, I mean, we did this every night for 6 nights out of the week for I don't know how many years.
Wow.
I mean, it was constant
Mm-hmm.
meetings and this and then that. It was crazy. And like you, I didn't realize I was tired. I was afraid to say I was tired because I
Mm-hmm.
literally had one part. I remember when I started being bold and when I started having the revelation that, I didn't, I felt like God said, I did not ask you to do all of those things. I didn't ask you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not your calling. That's not your calling. That's, just pointing these things out. And I started taking things off my plate. And I remember telling a pastor's wife said, I can't remember what she asked me to do, but I said, no, I can't do that. And she said, you're telling God no? I
Ooh,
said, no, I'm telling you no. Telling
yes.
you no. And so we get that guilt from others in the church if you do say no. And so we don't want to deal with that either. Did you ever have that experience as well?
So funny. I remember a specific example where I was on the phone with my former pastor's wife, and she asked me if I could do something, and deep inside of me wanted to say no. But instead, I opened up my planner and I was like, well, there's a 2 hour window right there that I could do that this week. And I like plugged it in. And I went, like, I just didn't have any concept for margin. I just thought
Yeah.
if there was time, you fill it.
Right.
And I didn't want to feel guilty. Like you said, I didn't want to feel guilty for saying no.
Right. Right. Oh, God bless us. God bless
Hmm.
us.
Yeah.
But I thank God for the revelation. And I thank God that you and I are trying to teach.
Yes.
We're trying to teach others, our Christian brothers and sisters, that you don't have to do all of that. It doesn't take all of that. And honestly, what God calls you to do. Not saying it won't be difficult, because it will be. Not saying it won't be tiresome, because it will be. But you don't have to be so exhausted, right?
Right.
You don't have to get to the point of burnout, especially when
Mhm.
you cast your cares on Him and you walk with Him. He won't let you get burned out.
Mhm.
You know?
Right.
Yeah,
He will lead us to, rhythms in our life that are not
absolutely.
exhausting.
Absolutely.
I think I wrote this, in a post like a year ago. I'm gonna have to resurrect it again and repost it, but something like, "God doesn't get glory from your burnout or from your hustle." And somehow
Right.
we think he does.
Right, right. And I said something actually similar to that. Was gosh, I can't remember when I posted. It was a few months ago, but I said, if you're hustling in ministry, you're doing it wrong.
Ooh.
You do not have to hustle in ministry. And I see pastors all the time, and I get it. I get where they're coming from. A lot of them, contrary to popular belief, the majority of pastors aren't paid. Like, they're not balling and living lavish lifestyle.
Right.
They're just
Right.
not. So and I get it, a lot of pastors want this to be their full-time job. They're bivocational, a lot of them. And so, or if they're not bivocational, they're taking every single ministry gig that they can find, which then in turn, you know, they end up burned
Mhm.
out. But you don't have to do that. You really do not. And I'm so happy that you and I are trying to teach that there's another way. Let's do ministry differently. So when you experience, you said you didn't call it burnout, you didn't know what to call it. How did you then change? What did you change? Was it your mindset? What exactly changed for you?
Yeah, it was my mindset. It was where I was finding my worth. Was I finding my worth in my ability to do all the things, or was it something that God had already gifted to me? So that was the first piece that changed. And then for me, I had to get out of an unhealthy ministry.
Yeah. Now, see, we don't like talking about that.
It's messy.
Yes, yes, yeah, same. I had a similar experience where I had to get out of a messy ministry as well. I actually took a step back. I'm still a member of this church, but I am not doing all the things. I took a step back.
Mm,
And at one point, I stopped attending that church. And it's so interesting because once I stopped attending this church and I was attending another church, that's when my relationship with God just flourished. It was just so much deeper than I could have ever imagined once I broke free from that mess.
I love that.
From that mess. And I, like I said, I am still a member, but I haven't allowed myself to go down that rabbit hole of mess. I'll just leave it at mess. I'm not going to say too much, but
Mhm, mhm.
I definitely get where you're coming from, and that is so good. So tell me a little bit more about. You said that you talk about rest in your ministry and your business. How do you help your clients and your do you have a Facebook group, or how are you helping?
I do have a Facebook group and I have a podcast, and
That's
the name of that is Abundant Grace.
I love the name of
So
that, by the way.
thank you. Yeah, that was, isn't it fun to name things? Like,
I
what am I going
know.
to name this, right? But so I teach rest. Oh, actually, I started the Facebook group because I wanted to teach like a week of rest. Like, can we just get in a group in a community together and learn to rest and
Yeah,
slow down?
yeah,
Because oftentimes you even just said something that sparked a note for me, just that you decided to go to a different church for a while and then you're still a member, or I had to completely leave a ministry. When we are going and going and going and not resting, a lot of times we don't realize if we're headed towards burnout or if we're completely out of alignment with what our calling is.
very true.
But then when we're not resting, we feel stuck. We
Yes.
feel like I'm stuck here. But when you get a rest and a little bit more perspective, then you can see the choices and options that you have.
Yeah.
And the power to choose is so important because we live our lives so much in the way that we've always lived our lives,
Yeah.
or the way that our family has, or the
Yeah.
way that this denomination always has. And we forget that we have the power to choose. Like, God has given us each such individual convictions, individual perspective, that we get to see things the way God is trying to communicate them to us. But a lot of times we have to slow down before we're going to get to that place where we know
Right.
that we have the power to choose.
That is so awesome. I know in the fitness world, your muscles don't grow until you rest. Like, you don't grow muscles just lifting weights, lifting weights, lifting weights. You actually start to grow muscles when you are at rest. I'm so
Wow.
happy that you mentioned that. That is awesome. And you're in your podcast. What's the name of it again?
Grace,
Abundant
abundant grace.
Grace. And do you teach that as well on your podcast?
I do. Um, I have different series that I do lately. I've been taking series, and I have some episodes on rest. The current series that we're doing this at the time of recording, doing a series on your unique personal relationship with God, because bringing in different people to talk about the different spiritual practices that maybe we've forgotten, different ways to worship. That's been super rewarding because we get to bring our uniqueness, and that's a gift. We don't have to try to fit that box or that mold or what we think a good Christian is supposed to look like. Your uniqueness is so valuable. So that's what we're focusing on the podcast right now.
I love that. What are some of you said the different ways to worship?
Hmm.
Oh my gosh, can you share some of that?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
please, please do.
So
I love that.
I have my friend Stephanie Palmer. She owns the business Hope Transformed, and she creates worship experiences. So she came in and was on my podcast to talk about worship. And one of the big things that she does is include all five of our senses in worship. So whether that's one idea that a gal got from listening to that episode is she carries a rock in her pocket now to remind her that God is our rock and he's our safety. And so there's like physical touch to remind us of who God is to us.
Yes.
And there, if you bring in all five senses and you think maybe just gratitude while you're drinking your morning tea or coffee or watching the sunrise and letting our hearts be in awe. When we're at breakneck speeds, a lot of times awe is one of the first things to go. But incorporating all five senses forces us to slow down and invite awe and wonder back in. And yeah, that was really powerful.
Oh, wow. I love to invite awe and wonder back in. I love that. And that is so true because I feel like I was telling my mom this. I said, man, I was just watching, just from what I see online, not saying that this is actually what's going on, but the perception online while watching churches, it's very showish, if you will. It's like a show.
Hmm.
I don't see a lot of ministry going on. It's like I'm watching these shows and it's very entertaining. Whereas true ministry, it's not about the hooping and the hollering that's great, but what are we doing outside of the entertainment? What are we doing in our communities? There's just so much going on. I told my mom, I said, I feel like Christians should be the ones paving the way for when we talk about clean eating, or when we talk about oh gosh, what is it called now with our environment? I'm losing it.
Mm,
Um, oh goodness. But anyway, we should care about our planet, right? Because our
yes,
Father made it.
right.
Things like that. I feel like churches are missing the boat when we could be talking more about those things instead of I don't know how it is where you are, but especially in the Black church, there are a lot of days. So there's Women's Day, there's Men's Day, there's Friends Day, there's all these programs,
Mm,
but I don't see a lot of ministry. And
yeah,
again, I could be wrong, but what I'm seeing online, which is a huge opportunity to showcase ministry and not so much your program, if that makes
sure.
sense.
Yeah. I saw something a few months ago, maybe that stuck with me about Christian leadership and the Christian leadership, I don't know, machine or perception has replaced discipleship
Wow.
because we see so much emphasis. Isn't that crazy? That's
That
such a
is
powerful thing.
great. Yeah.
But we see so much emphasis on be the best leader you can be, servant leader, and all of this stuff that I don't think is wrong. But if you're making it biblical, I just don't see the biblical case for it. I don't see
Yeah.
Jesus as, yes, he was a leader. Yes, he affected change. Yes, I mean, he changed everything, but he impacted a lot of people. But I see him doing that on a very personal discipleship level rather than a leading just from the front of the room. There's
Right.
space to lead from the front of the room, but there's a lot more that needs to be done on a one-on-one personal level.
Yeah. If anything, I feel like leaders should be, and excuse me, there's a garbage truck going by if you can hear now. I don't know. But I feel like I feel like leaders should be teaching us how to be disciples.
Mhm.
You know, there should be, because we're supposed to make disciples, and then we're supposed to love each other.
Yes.
Like, how do you know you're a Christian? By the way you loved your fellow brother and sister. I mean, that's pretty much it,
Right.
really.
Mhm.
All this other stuff, why?
Mhm. Right.
That's so good. That's scary though. What you
Yes.
mentioned, that's very scary, but it is. I feel like I already knew that, but you saying it makes me go, oh, dang, I was
Right.
right.
Yeah, seeing it, like, just
Yeah.
concisely said was kind of shocking,
Yeah.
and also
Yeah.
it just is. It's what we've watched happen.
Yeah. Oh, God help us.
Mhm.
Lord have mercy. Well, I don't even you mentioned that you're teaching rest in your Facebook group. How are you teaching it? Like, what are they doing to rest?
Mhm. Yeah, well, there's another resource that I love by Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and, have you read her book,
Yeah,
Sacred Rest?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that book. That's one of the things that we talk about is filling our different rest buckets, because we can be depleted in one area and trying to fill in from another, and it's doesn't work that way very
Right.
well when we're like, man, so burnt out in this area, and we think we need more sleep when maybe we just need some sensory or creative rest.
Absolutely.
So that's super powerful. Something else that I do is just giving us permission to not produce, reminding
Mm.
reminding ourselves that we're not human doings.
Right. We're
We're
human
human
beings.
beings, but we don't act
Exactly.
like it. So
So
it,
true.
it has to start with a lot of mindset work because if we're to stop what we're doing, a lot of times those mental gymnastics are still going on and we are not actually getting our cup filled and
Yep.
resting and restoring.
Yep.
So it has to start with what's going on in our mindset. Why do we think we don't have time to rest? Oh, wait, do we have the power to choose rest? Oh, we do know we have the power to choose, but we don't feel worthy of it. Now, maybe we've gotten to the root of it,
Ooh.
so it has to start with our belief around rest and our belief around ourselves. Like, what am I letting resting say about me? Am
Yeah.
I letting it say that I'm not as valuable if I'm not contributing as
That's
much?
good.
Or if I'm asking someone else then that has to pick up my slack, if am I less than because I'm now prioritizing not being burnt out? So
That's good.
we have to get to the bottom of those
Yeah.
narratives.
Yeah. That's really good. I had a ministry leader tell me, and he wasn't a client, so I didn't say a whole lot, but he says, I just can't sit still. I just can't. I can't sit still. I'm not burned out, but I just can't sit still. And I'm thinking, you're burned out.
Mm,
If you can't sit still, first of all, why? Why do you have to always do something? And I like that you said that we should ask those questions. If I can't sit still, why is that? And then what is that saying? What do I think others are calling me lazy? Like what else is going on in our minds? I'm so happy that you do that in your Facebook group. That is awesome.
and that's a free group. You can go to yourrelationshipwithgod.com/rest. Well, no, I think I'm gonna have to type it into my browser to
I tell
remember.
you, you know what? Send it to me and I'll
I
put a link.
will.
Yeah, I'll put a link because that's awesome. And I'm so happy you said it because I was actually thinking about creating a Facebook group. People who don't have Facebook groups don't realize the work that goes into.
I did not start mine for so long. Um,
Right.
man, and then it just came to the point where I got the green flag from God, like,
Yeah.
go for it. Because we need places where we can come together and
Yep.
that's the beauty of community. We can say, hey, I'm struggling with this. And somebody goes, oh, I'm so glad you said that too, because I've been letting this create a story about myself. And turns out I'm normal like everybody else.
Yeah, yeah. See, that just freed me because, like I said, I keep hearing from
Hmm.
God to create a Facebook group, a community, really.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't want to. And then the other thing, my old Facebook account was hacked and disabled back in May, right when I was going to start a Facebook group. And it was hacked and disabled. And if you know anything about Facebook, there are no human beings that work in customer service. Like there's no customer service. And if there are no humans. So you can't get any help. And so I just let my Facebook previous Facebook profile just stay disabled, and because I couldn't get any help. And so I finally last month created another Facebook page or profile.
Hmm.
And I thought, man, I should go ahead. And I was praying about it. And God was like, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, go ahead. Do it.
Good. I'm glad you should do
No.
it.
Yeah.
Um, you know what I'm going to do, Monique? I would love to open up a couple different options for your listeners. Sorry, there's a frog in my throat. I can't get it to go
No
away.
problem.
If they go to yourrelationshipwithgod.com / the Burned Out Preacher podcast, I'll have some goodies there for them. I'll open up um, my identity and rest challenge
Oh,
that helps us with that mindset piece of worthiness and
right.
resting. And then I'll put a link to the Facebook group on that page, and everything will be in one spot.
Oh, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. Well, thank you so, so much. Well, listen, I have enjoyed this so much. I really have. I don't have any other questions for you. What would you like to leave our listeners with?
I'll leave you with a personal story for the first time that I preached. So I was invited to join the speaking team on my church, and it was such a privilege because the previous tradition I came from, like women were not allowed to speak. And that was just such a big deal to me and such a privilege because I know how many women have maybe wanted to and felt like they shouldn't or couldn't. But as I was interacting with someone, this was maybe a couple weeks before the first time I preached. I was interacting with a customer service person at a local store, and I was getting frustrated because she got my order wrong. And this thought came into my mind, like, well, don't say anything rude because you're preaching now. And I thought, wait a second, this is the enemy trying to use this new opportunity for me to define myself
Ooh,
as an identity. And I just want to point out how easy it is for us to find identities in roles or our worth in some calling.
yeah.
And in that moment, I thought, no, we're not going to start associating our worth and our identity with it. I'm preaching. I'm here. I am representing the King of Kings. I
Right.
want to love this person really well and be patient with her. That's why I'm going to be kind, not because I am somebody or she might see my face on the church's Facebook page or like none of that.
Mm,
That is not my motivation.
wow.
And when our identity is tied to things, it shifts our motivation to
Yeah.
protecting that identity. And I just want to confess that and point out how easy it is for us to slip into identifying ourselves by things that are actually lesser than beloved of God. And when our identity is founded in the love of God, that is secure. That's not going anywhere. And we can let everything else go. We can let ourselves fail. We can let ourselves rest, and we can let love flow through us to other people.
Oh, that was beautiful.
I'm so glad.
Oh gosh, that was beautiful. That was so, so good. Thank you so much for sharing that.
I
And
can't wait to get to know you better, Monique.
I
This has been such a
know,
pleasure.
I know. This has just been awesome. Tell everyone where they can find you again. I think you mentioned it in the beginning, but let us know again where everyone can find you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so go to yourrelationshipwithgod.com/, the Burned Out Preacher podcast, and I'll have goodies for you there. You can come listen to my podcast, Abundant Grace. I have over 100 episodes. You can scroll back through,
Right.
listen to all kinds of things and about your relationship with God. And you can follow me on Instagram, emily.abundantgrace. Send me a message. I would love to get to know you too.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I will leave links to everything in the description on YouTube and also in the podcast description over wherever you listen to your podcast. But this has been such an amazing conversation.
Thank you
You,
so much, Monique.
thank you. Well, that is all that we have, everyone. Until next time, bye.